December 20th, 1943, 27,300 feet above Bremen, Germany. The cold is absolute. Minus 60 degrees Celsius. The kind of cold that turns blood to ice in seconds. Inside the cockpit of a B-17 bomber called Ye Olde Pub, 21-year-old Second Lieutenant Charles Brown can barely feel his hands on the controls. This is his first combat mission as an aircraft commander. His first time leading 10 men into the teeth of Nazi Germany's industrial heart. He doesn't know it yet, but in the next hour, he will meet his death. And then, impossibly, he will meet his savior. The same man. What happens in the frozen sky above Germany this day will remain buried, a secret so dangerous that speaking it aloud could mean execution. It will take for decades, a classified ad in a fighter pilot newsletter, and the stubborn refusal of one man to let go of a mystery before these two pilots find each other again. When they do, they won't just shake hands, they'll become brothers. The briefing room at RAF Bolton is thick with cigarette smoke and anxiety. Nearly 500 B-17 flying fortresses are preparing to strike the Focke-Wulf aircraft factory in Bremen. The intelligence officer pulls no punches. They should expect hundreds of German fighters. Bremen is defended by more than 250 flak guns, some of the best gunners in the Reich. Charlie Brown and his crew are assigned to Purple Heart Corner, the edge of the formation where German fighters strike first, where the weakest planes die first. But 3 bombers develop mechanical problems before takeoff. Brown is moved to the front of the formation. Some might call that lucky. The 10 men of Ye Olde Pub climb aboard. The youngest is 19. The oldest, 33. Some have college degrees. Others are farm boys. All of them are about to learn what war really means. At 11 o'clock a.m., they cross into German airspace. The flak begins immediately. Black bursts of shrapnel bloom around them like deadly flowers. The entire aircraft shudders as near misses buffet the wings. Then the fighters come sleek Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, diving through the formation in coordinated waves. Before they even reach Bremen, Ye Olde Pub takes hits. Flak shatters the plexiglass nose, exposing the bombardier to the screaming wind. Engine number 2 is knocked out completely. Engine number 4 begins running rough, forcing Brown to throttle it back to prevent it from tearing itself apart. They slow down, fall behind. In bomber formations, falling behind is a death sentence, but they press on. They drop their bombs on target, and then, struggling onto engines, hemorrhaging altitude and airspeed, they try to run. The German fighters smell blood. 15 Messerschmitts descend on the crippled bomber. 20mm cannon shells tear through aluminum skin. Machine gun rounds punch through the fuselage, through instruments, through flesh. The tail gunner, Sergeant Hugh Eckenrode, is hit. His blood freezes instantly in the minus 60-degree air, forming red icicles over his silent guns. Inside, it's chaos. Half the crew is wounded. The oxygen system is destroyed at this altitude. That alone can kill them. Charlie Brown begins to lose consciousness. The bomber enters an inverted spin, the ground rushing up at them. Brown comes to at less than 1,000 feet. Somehow by instinct or divine intervention, he levels the aircraft. The wings are shredded. The tail is barely attached. The electrical system is dead. The hydraulics are failing. Through the holes in the fuselage, Brown can see daylight where there should be metal, but they're still flying. Barely. He turns north, toward England, toward home. It's 250 miles across the frozen North Sea. They have one engine at full power, another sputtering, and a plane that looks like it's been through a shredder. Below them, a German airfield appears, and someone on the ground is watching. Franz Stigler is 28 years old. Before the war, he was a Lufthansa airline piloted dreamer who loved the freedom of flight. Then came Poland, France, North Africa, and now the defense of the Reich itself. By December 1943, Stigler has 27 confirmed kills. He's an ace 3 times over, but he's also a man who has lost too much. His brother August, also a Luftwaffe pilot, was killed earlier in the war. American bombers have reduced German cities to rubble. Hamburg is gone. Bremen is burning. Friends Stigler trained with are dead. The war is eating everyone, and yet, Stigler is not a Nazi. He never joined the party. He fights because Germany is his home, because duty demands it, because the alternative is watching from the ground while others die in his place. On this cold December morning, Stigler has already shot down to B-17s. One more kill will earn him the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest award for valor. For Stigler, the medal isn't about glory. It's proof that there's meaning in what he's doing, that he's a warrior, not just a killer. He's on the ground, rearming and repairing his Messerschmitt Bf 109.50 caliber bullet is lodged in the radiator when he hears the labored roar of a B-17 flying impossibly low over the airfield. He looks up. The bomber is a wreck, barely airborne. Alone, Stigler tosses his cigarette aside, climbs into his fighter, and takes off. This is going to be easy. His Knight's Cross is 3 minutes away. He catches up to the B-17 quickly, positioning himself behind the tail for the killing shot. His finger moves to the trigger, and then he looks closer. Through the torn fuselage, Stigler sees everything. The tail gunner slumped in his harness, dead, blood frozen in grotesque patterns. The waist gunner staggering, trying to help wounded comrades. The ball-trig gunner attempting to climb out of his shattered position. And in the cockpit, visible through the missing nose, a young pilot, alone, wounded in the shoulder, struggling to keep the bomber level. Stigler can see their faces, can see their terror, their youth. They're not shooting back. They can't, they're helpless. And suddenly, Franz Stigler remembers something his commanding officer, Gustav Redl, told him back in North Africa. The words come back with absolute clarity. If I ever see or hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I will shoot you myself. You are fighter pilots first, last, always. You fight by rules to keep your humanity. Stigler's hand moves away from the trigger. To him, these men are already in parachutes. They're defenseless. Shooting them wouldn't be combat, it would be murder. He fingers the rosary in his pocket, a gift from his mother. He thinks of his brother, of the men he's killed in fair fights, in the chaos of combat where both sides had her. Chance. This isn't that. Franz Stigler makes a decision that will haunt him in the best and worst ways for the rest of his life. He pulls alongside the B-17. Charlie Brown's heart stops. He's certain this is the end. He waits for the cannon fire that will tear them apart. Instead, the German pilot waves, gestures toward the ground. Land, surrender, you'll live. Brown shakes his head. They're going home or dying trying. Stigler nods. He understands. Then he does something extraordinary. He takes up formation on the B-17's wing, flies in close formation. To anyone watching from the ground, they look like a German fighter escorting a captured bomber, a ruse the Luftwaffe sometimes used with rebuilt B-17s. They fly together toward the Atlantic Wall. Below them, the most fearsome anti-aircraft batteries in Europe. Gunners who could shred the crippled bomber in seconds, not as single gunfires. Stigler waves again, tries to gesture. Fly to Sweden. Neutral territory, medical care. You'll be interned, but you'll live. Brown doesn't understand. He keeps flying west, toward England. Stigler stays with them, across the coastal guns, out over the North Sea. When they're finally clear of German airspace, he pulls alongside one last time, looks Charlie Brown in the eye. And salutes. Then he banks away, disappearing into the winter sky. Charlie Brown, stunned, confused, bleeding, returns the salute. Ye Olde Pub limps across 250 miles of frozen ocean and crash lands at RAF Seething. The ground crew stares in disbelief. They've never seen a B-17 so damaged, still flying. At the debriefing, Brown tells his intelligence officers everything about the German fighter that could have killed them but didn't, that escorted them to safety. He's ordered never to speak of it again. Someone decided, Brown later recalled. You can't be human and be flying in a German cockpit. For Franz Stigler, returning to base is an act of silent terror. If anyone learns what he did showed mercy to the enemy, let a bomber escape, he could face a court-martial, execution. He tells no one. The Knight's Cross he was so close to earning, gone, but Stigler will later say he earned something more valuable that day. He kept his humanity. The war grinds on. Stigler survives the Allied bombing campaigns, the collapse of the Luftwaffe, the fall of Berlin. When Germany surrenders, he finds himself in a shattered country that wants to forget everything. In 1953, he emigrates to Canada, settles in Vancouver, starts a business, builds a quiet life. Charlie Brown goes home to West Virginia, finishes college, rejoins the Air Force in 1949, serves until 1965, retires to Miami, starts a family. Both men try to move on, but the memory won't fade. Brown begins having nightmares about the incident. Not nightmares of combat, nightmares of mystery. Who was that pilot? Why did he spare them? After decades of silence, Brown can't take it anymore. He has to know. In 1986, Charlie Brown attends a reunion of combat pilots called Gathering of the Eagles. Someone asks if he had any memorable missions during the war. Brown hesitates, then tells the story of the German fighter pilot who let them live. The room falls silent. Grown men, combat veterans who've seen everything, are stunned. Someone suggests he tried to find the pilot. Brown spends 4 years searching. He writes to the U.S. Air Force Historical Division, to West German military archives, to associations of former Luftwaffe pilots. He gets bureaucratic runarounds, dead ends, files lost in the chaos of post-war Germany. Nothing. Finally, in 1990, Brown writes a simple ad and places it in a newsletter for former fighter pilots. Just a few lines. I am searching for the man who saved my life on December 20th, 1943. I was a B-17 pilot, plane badly damaged, escorted out of Germany by a German fighter pilot. He saluted and flew away. Months pass. Then one day, a letter arrives from Vancouver, Canada. The handwriting is careful, precise. The English is slightly formal. It begins. I was the one. Franz Stigler describes everything. The date, the time, the location of his airfield, the condition of the B-17, the wounds he could see on the crew, the way he waved, trying to get them to land or fly to Sweden. The salute, every detail matches Brown's hazy, traumatized memories. In 1990, Charlie Brown flies to Vancouver. Two old men meet in an airport. One American, one German. Former enemies. Brown extends his hand. Stigler takes it and then they embrace. It was like meeting a family member, Brown later said. Like a brother you haven't seen for 40 years. The two men talk for hours, days. They reconstruct that December day in 1943, filling in the gaps in each other's memories. Brown learns for the first time about the coastal guns, about how Stigler flew formation to protect them, about the personal risks Stigler took. Stigler learns that all but one of the crew survived the war, that Brown went on to have children, grandchildren. I saw them, Stigler said, tears in his eyes, and I couldn't shoot them down. Brown's nightmares stop. The two families become close. Jackie Brown and Hia Stigler, the wives, become friends. The men take fishing trips together, travel cross-country to schools and veterans reunions, sharing their story, but not everyone wants to hear it. Even decades after the war, Stigler receives hate mail from Germany. People call him a traitor. Some Canadian neighbors shun him, calling him a Nazi. Stigler's response is always the same. They would never understand. Brown defends his friend fiercely. Franz is a hero, he tells anyone who will listen. He did what few men would have the courage to do. The two men visit the crew members. Stigler saved men now in their 70s and 80s, with children and grandchildren. One reunion brings together the entire crew of Ye Olde Pub and their families, over 60 people, 3 generations. Stigler looks at them all, realizes that his one decision created all these lives. These children, these grandchildren who exist because he chose mercy over a medal. He weeps. Author Adam Makos hears about the story and decides to write a book. He interviews both men extensively. One night, staying at Charlie Brown's house, Makos is browsing Brown's library. He pulls out a book on German fighter jets, a gift from Stigler to Brown. Inside, there's an inscription in careful handwriting. In 1940, I lost my only brother as a night fighter. On the 20th of December, for days before Christmas, I had the chance to save a B-17 from her destruction, a plane so badly damaged it was a wonder that she was still flying. The pilot, Charlie Brown, is for me as precious as my brother was. Thanks, Charlie. Your brother, Franz. World War II took Franz Stigler's brother and 50 years later gave him another. Franz Stigler died on March 22, 2008. At the age of 92, Charlie Brown died 8 months later on November 24, 2008. At the age of 87, for 18 years, they had been inseparable. Two old warriors who found in each other something the war had tried to destroy, prove that humanity can survive even in humanity's darkest hour. In their obituaries, each man was described as the other's special brother. The story of their encounter became known as a higher call, a reference to the code of honor both men lived by. The idea that even in war, there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. That enemy doesn't have to mean monster. That sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is refuse to kill. Charlie Brown's daughter, Dawn Warner, said her father's friendship with Franz was a healing thing. The nightmare stopped. The guilt over surviving when so many others didn't eased. Franz, for his part, found redemption. The one good thing that came from the war. The one act he could be proud of without reservation. But here's what makes their story truly extraordinary. Franz Stigler didn't just spare an enemy that day. He risked his life to save them. Flying information over the coastal guns meant if Ye Olde Pub got shot down, he'd likely go down with it. Staying with them meant burning fuel, meaning he might not make it back to base himself. And every second he spent with that B-17 was another second someone might see him and report him for treason. He did it anyway, because 60 years earlier, a commander named Gustav Rettel understood something essential. Wars are fought by nations, but they're waged by human beings. And if you lose your humanity in the fight, you've already lost what you're fighting for. You follow the rules of war for you. Rettel had said, not for your enemy. You fight by rules to keep your humanity. Franz Stigler kept his humanity. Charlie Brown got to grow old. And to enemies became brothers today. The story of Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler is taught in military academies as an example of honor in combat. The book A Higher Call has sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Their story has been featured in documentaries, news articles, even a Sabaton heavy metal song. But perhaps the most powerful testament to their friendship sits in a photograph taken in the 1990s. Two old men standing beside each other, one in an American flight jacket, the other in a Luftwaffe squadron patch, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling. You can't tell who's the American and who's the German unless you know the story. You can only tell they're brothers. On December 20th, 1943, in the frozen sky above Germany, a young German fighter pilot looked into the face of his enemy and saw a human being. He made a choice that defied orders, logic, self-interest, and the law of his nation. He chose mercy, and 47 years later, that mercy gave him back something the war had taken, a brother. The war ended in 1945, but the brotherhood lasted until 2008. Some victories, it turns out, take decades to win.